Hello all. In session 3, we will look into the aspect of functionalism. The learning objectives include who is the founder of functionalism? Secondly, what are the ideas put forth in functionalism? Session outcome: understanding functionalism, understanding the ideas of functionalism, understanding the contribution of functionalism to the field of psychology. William James and functionalism. William James began teaching anatomy and physiology, but as his interest in psychology developed, he began teaching psychology almost exclusively. His comprehensive textbook on the subject, Principles of Psychology, is so brilliantly written that copies are still in print. Unlike Wundt and Titchener, James believed that trying to study consciousness was like trying to study the wind. Conscious ideas are constantly flowing in an ever-changing stream, and once you start thinking about what you were just thinking about, what you were thinking about is no longer what you were thinking about. It's what you are thinking about, and it looks a little dizzy. Instead, James focused on how the mind allows people to function in the real world, how people work, play, and adapt to their surroundings, a viewpoint he called functionalism. James was more interested in the importance of consciousness to everyday life rather than just its analysis. He believed that the scientific study of consciousness itself was not yet possible. James focused on how the mind allows people to function in the real world, how people work, play, and adapt to their surroundings, a viewpoint he called functionalism. He was of the opinion that if physical traits could aid in survival, why couldn't behavioral traits do the same? Animals and people whose behavior helped them to survive would pass those traits on to their offspring, perhaps by teaching or even by some mechanism of heredity. For example, a behavior such as avoiding the eyes of others in an elevator can be seen as a way of protecting one's personal space, a kind of territorial protection that may have its roots in the primitive need to protect one's home and source of food and water from intruders, or as a way of avoiding what might seem like a challenge to another person. In the new field of psychology, functionalism offered an alternative viewpoint to the structuralism. But like so many of psychology's early ideas, it is no longer a major perspective. Instead, one can find elements of functionalism in the modern fields of educational psychology, that is, studying the application of psychological concepts to education, and industrial or organizational psychology, that is, studying the application of psychological concepts to business or organizations and industry, as well as other areas in psychology. Functionalism also played a part in the development of one of the more modern perspectives, evolutionary psychology. Next, we will look into behaviorism. Once again, let us look into the learning objectives. Who is the founder of behaviorism? What are the ideas put forth in behaviorism? Understanding behaviorism, understanding the ideas of behaviorism, understanding the contribution of behaviorism to the field of psychology. Watson's behaviorism. By the early 1900s, psychologist John B. Watson had tried of the arguing among the structuralists. He challenged the functionalist viewpoint as well as psychoanalysis with his own science of behavior or behaviorism. Watson wanted to bring psychology back to a focus on scientific inquiry, and he felt that the only way to do that was to ignore the whole consciousness issue and focus only on observable behavior, something that could be directly seen and measured. Watson believed that phobias are learned through the process of conditioning and set out to prove it. He took a baby known as Little Albert and taught him to fear a white rat by making a loud, scary noise every time the infant saw the rat, until finally just seeing the rat caused the infant to cry and become fearful. Even though little Albert was not afraid of the rat at the start, the experiment worked very well. In fact, he later appeared to be afraid of other fuzzy things, including a rabbit, a dog, and a sealskin coat. Watson wanted to prove that all behavior was a result of a stimulus-response relationship. Watson felt the need to show the world that a much simpler explanation could be found. Although scaring a baby sounds a little cruel, he felt that the advancement of the science of behavior was worth the baby's relatively brief discomfort. One of Watson's graduate students later decided to repeat Watson and Rayner's study but added training that would cancel out the phobic reaction of the baby to the white rat. One of those students was Mary Cover Jones, who completed her master's degree in 1920 under Watson's supervision. She duplicated the Little Albert study with another child, Little Peter, successfully conditioning Peter to be afraid of a white rabbit. She then began a process of counter conditioning in which Peter was exposed to the white rabbit from a distance while eating a food that he really liked. The pleasure of the food overweighed the fear of the faraway rabbit. Day by day, the situation was repeated with the rabbit being brought closer each time until Peter was no longer afraid of the rabbit. Jones went on to become one of the early pioneers of behavior therapy. She was also a key figure in the Auckland Growth Study, a study of 200 fifth and 6th grade children that followed their development from the beginning of puberty to the end of adolescence.